Okay, so I took a couple weeks off because I was really busy for Christmas. But for this week, I'm going to show you how to make a slide-on band for this titanium ring. However, I am out of wax at the moment for my lathe, so I'm just going to use some of my leftovers. So this is just a basic plumber's torch. Now I usually use methyl hydrate for this, but for expediency I'm going to use my plumber's torch. So I'm just going to heat up the end of this leftover, just like that, and then here's another leftover. I'm just going to heat that up, get it to melt, and then I'm just going to take the two ends and fuse them together. Now I'm going to redo that because it wasn't quite hot enough on both sides. There we go. So now it doesn't have to be straight or anything. Just going to weld the edge together a little bit. There we go. Now I'm just going to let that cool off before I put it in my lathe. And that'll let me use this end piece here one more time so I'm not wasting any of my wax. You can see here I've already done that once, and I actually might use this piece here. Before I put it on the lathe, I have to make sure that it's well cooled. Otherwise it'll tear itself to shreds. Not too concerned if it cools while it's in the lathe, so I'm just going to put it in my lathe while I'm letting it cool. So this is my mini lathe. I do have a larger lathe, but it's in a larger space. And I'm just going to see if I can find a sample. Of what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to be doing is making a sleeve for something. Oh, come out of the bag, you. That looks like this. So this should be just about cool, but so this is come on, focus. So this is a braided band, and there is along one of these two sides. There's a solder joint along here. I can't quite find it, but that's good, right? So the braid in that case was made individually, and then the shank was fit on it. Now I'm using this titanium piece that my son made me. It's just a titanium band with a texture on it. And I want this to fit perfectly tight on here. So I'm going to start off by carving it to fit this band. So I don't really care what the interior diameter is for this ring. It's just stock anyways. But I do want it to fit this ring nicely. So, and I need quite a bit of material to do this. So I'm just going to keep cutting this until I get close to the interior cut. Now I can actually make this a little easier for myself. I'm going to measure it. So I'm going to take this ring, I'm going to measure the exterior diameter. I want my shoulders to be just slightly above this, and this is measuring at just about some on here. My top is my millimeters. So you can see that it is 20, just about 22 millimeters. So I'm going to make my exterior diameter 22 and a half. Right now I'm sitting at 26, just about. So at this stage, I'm just eyeing it. And as I get closer to my 22, 23 area, so I'm at 23 and 23.7. So now I'm just going to start being a little bit more careful. I'm not going to remove quite as much material here. I'm using the feed on this last pass. This should put me about 23, and that'll give me a little bit of cleanup because I'm going to be casting this in silver or gold, and then I need a little bit of room for material loss on the sanding and filing out of the casting. So just going to check this. It is 23.1, so that's okay. So that's basically the same diameter as the outside. It'll give me a little bit of a shoulder, but that's okay. Now I know that this is, I think it's 6 millimeters. Yes, so this is the piece that I'm sliding on is 6 millimeters. So that means I need at least a step of 7 millimeters or more. Before I do my step, I'm going to face it. So this piece here, what I want is I want this to slide over that wax, and I want it to be fairly tight. Now I could just measure the interior diameter of my ring, but I don't really care what the interior diameter is as long as that slides on there. So I'm just going to trial and error it. And I'm just cutting a step long enough, big enough for this to test it first. So this ring's got a fair bit of thickness to it, I can tell. Almost there. Let's just check that. There we go. Pretty tight. So this is where I want it at least as thick as this, or as wide as this, plus enough material for the edge band to go on. So I got to get that step off of there. So when this slides on, if I did this right now, and let me just clear this off. This little piece of white paper is on here for measurements, but also so you can see past this and you can see the edge. So you can see that I have very little lip right on here. Now that's to hold my edge band. So I am going to cut this a little bit further. When I backed my tool off last time, I didn't back it away from the piece. I just moved it off to the left so that I can come back in here. There we go. Now when I put this on, you can see that I've got quite a bit of a lip right there, and that's what I want. So this is good. If I was going to make this a spinner band, I would make this a little bit looser of a fit, and that's fine. So now I'm going to switch to my interior cutting tool. Let me just get a little bit more light in the area here. So I'm going to cut to my interior. I want this wall thickness to be no thinner than 0.75 millimeter. And again, this is just a stock sample ring, so I don't have to and I'm cutting it pretty deep because I have to cut this some more. And I'm just going to move the camera over a little bit so you can see it from this angle here. And you can see, I'll move my light over just a bit more for you. There we go. So you can see this wall thickness here is still pretty heavy. That's what I'm talking about when I say I don't want that any more than 0.75. Sorry, anything less than 0.75. So I'm just going to quickly back my tool out of the way, measure this wall thickness here. So you can see that it is still, can you see that it's still over 1 millimeter? So it's 1.4 millimeters. So it's still thick. I would never cut titanium on this lathe, it's just not strong enough. Like I said, I have a larger lathe for lathing titanium downstairs. Now I still have cleanup to do on this. After it's cast and everything, so I do want to leave a little bit of wall thickness. This is the other tool here. I'll see if I can show it to you. This is my other tool that I'm using, and it's unfortunately on the back side of the machine, so you can't really see it when I'm doing this. And I'm just going to move the camera back because it's actually in my way while I'm working on this. So now that I've got the interior cut, I can see right here that this step, which is the step of the shank, is pretty tall. If I slide this ring on, it's a fair bit above the titanium. I don't need that. Titanium is more than strong enough. I actually could use just the titanium the way it is. But I'm going to get a little bit more working material here. to be careful that my tool doesn't hit. Make sure that none of this hits these jaws when they're spinning. Oops. Sorry, hit the camera with my head. Okay, so that's ready to go. What I want to do now is I want to line the edge of the tool, and I guess you can't really see it. So let's try getting this straight above here. Sorry about the camera angle, guys. That's a bit better. So what I want to do is I want to get this edge here lined up with this edge, but before I do that, my tool post over here has a millimeter gauge. I'm gonna set that to 0 so that I know that my tool edge, the right edge of my tool, is on 0 on my guide and on the very right side of this. Now, it's going to be difficult for me to see because the camera's in the way, but maybe I can just zoom in and use the camera. So you can see how that edge is just about right on there. So now I'm going to use it using my tool posts, my cross slide. I'm going to slide over 1 millimeter and a half. So that's one half of the wax, and I'll clean that up the rest of the way. This will slide on here, but I need another one of these. So before I do anything else, right now, I know that this interior diameter matches my shank, and what I'm going to need, however, and the exterior of this matches. I'm just making sure that I have enough material to cut a side shank out of this piece. Alright, so that should do it. Now I'm going to go back into a center cut. Bring my center cut tool back in. And I'm going to take an interior cut off of this. I'm going to take an interior cut off of that until this can slide on and fit on inside this other piece, and that'll be my side band. And again, I could measure all of this, but this mini lathe isn't really that accurate, unfortunately. So I just trial and error it. Again, this is just for stock, so there we go. So you can see how that slides in there now. just like that. So now I'm going to go back to the sideband, re-zeroing my cross slide. Backing the tool out. So once again, I want to line. Let's see if I can't change the camera lighting angle here a bit. There we go. That's a bit better. So I want to line up the right edge of my cutting tool with this outside edge of the wax, so that when I count over my 1.5 millimeters on my cross slide, it will be perfect. I can also use a piece of material like this and slide it over here until it lines up flat like that, so that I know it's perfect. And then I slide it over using my cross slide, 1.5 millimeters. Now when I cut this off, so there's it is. So that will, let me zoom out for you here. So this slides on here like this. Hold on. I know it does. Slides on there like this. I'll cast this in silver or gold. This would look really good in gold, so maybe I will. And then this will get soldered onto here. Like that. So there'll be a solder joint along this edge, then it gets flattened off. Now I can see one thing. I've messed up a little bit. This side here is a little bit thinner than this side, which works out because there's a tiny little lip right there. So I'm going to thin this out, and I'll do that by hand, just ever so slightly. And I might curve these so that I have a band that looks like this with a titanium core. And then I'll, round the inside a little bit. Anyways, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching, guys.